Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
This episode of Dark Poutine is brought to you by MasterCard. In this special episode, we're exploring a growing threat hitting more close to home than ever, cybercrime. We've dived deep into all sorts of dark tales before, but this one's a bit different because it's happening right now, affecting people and businesses across Canada. This is Dark Poutine bonus episode, Cybercrime in Canada, Staying Safe Online.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
Cybercrime isn't just a distant threat, it's already affected some of our country's biggest names and systems, as well as small businesses and individuals like you. Remember the Life Labs breach in 2019? That attack exposed the personal information of 15 million Canadians, a staggering number. There was also the Equifax breach in 2017, which compromised the sensitive data of thousands more Canadians. And who could forget the chaos in Newfoundland in 2021 when a ransomware attack took down parts of the province's healthcare system, leaving medical services disrupted for days? But it's not just these big headline-grabbing attacks we need to worry about. Small businesses, the backbone of our economy, are also increasingly under fire. Cyber criminals are becoming more sophisticated, and their targets aren't just big corporations anymore. They're coming after all of us. Don't worry, we're not just going to outline these incidents and leave you hanging in this episode. For the first half, I'll discuss the beginnings of cybercrime and its legacy up to now. In the second half, you'll hear from Amisha Parikh, the Vice President of Security Solutions at MasterCard, as she and I discuss cybersecurity threats in Canada and how you can protect yourself and your business. Amisha will give practical advice on everything from safeguarding personal information to spotting the signs of a phishing scam, and she'll tell us what steps to take if we find ourselves on the wrong end of a cyber attack. So settle in, because we're about to journey into the dark and often invisible world of cybercrime in Canada. With proper knowledge and tools, we can all be better prepared to face these threats head on and keep ourselves, our families, and our businesses safe online. Shedding a little light on this topic will make it much less scary. Knowledge is power, folks. The history of cybercrime is a fascinating and complex journey that parallels the rise of technology itself. It's a story of innovation both by those creating new technologies and those exploiting them for malicious purposes. Cybercrime in its most primitive form dates back to the 1970s when computers were large, centralized systems. The concept of hacking first emerged with the advent of telephones, not computers. In the 1960s and 70s, a group of tech enthusiasts, later known as phone freaks, discovered ways to manipulate the phone system to make free long-distance calls. One of the most famous phone freaks was John Draper, also known as Captain Crunch. Draper discovered that a toy whistle found in boxes of Captain Crunch cereal could produce a 2600 Hz tone, the same frequency AT&T's long-distance switching system used to indicate that a line was ready to accept a call. By blowing this whistle into a phone receiver, Draper and other phone freaks could bypass the standard billing process, making long-distance calls for free. As computers became more widespread, the first actual cybercrime incidents appeared. In 1981, a hacker named Ian Murphy, also known as Captain Zap, made headlines by hacking into the AT&T network and altering the internal clocks, which affected billing times and resulted in cheaper long-distance calls. Murphy's antics landed him in court, making him one of the first people convicted of a cybercrime in the U.S. The 1980s saw the birth of the first computer viruses, such as the infamous Elk cloner, which infected Apple II computers in 1982. These early viruses were relatively benign, often more annoying than a real threat. However, they marked the beginning of a new era where malicious software, or malware, would become a significant tool for cybercriminals. As the internet became more ubiquitous in the 1990s, cybercrime incidents grew exponentially. The internet provided cybercriminals with a vast interconnected network of targets and facilitated the rise of organized cybercrime. Criminal groups began to see the internet as a lucrative avenue for fraud, theft, and extortion. The infamous I Love You virus in 2000, which spread through email and caused billions of dollars in damage globally, was a stark reminder of the destructive potential of cybercrime. During this period, governments around the world began to notice the growing threat. The United States, for instance, passed the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in 1986, one of the first laws specifically targeting cybercrime. However, enforcement was often challenging due to the global nature of the internet and the relative anonymity it provided to criminals. In Canada, the history of cybercrime mirrors the global trend, but with some unique characteristics. Canada's first significant encounter with cybercrime occurred in the early 1990s, with the case of the MOD, Masters of Deception Group. Although primarily based in the US, this group of hackers had members in Canada who were involved in high-profile intrusions into government and corporate systems. As the internet grew, so did the scale of cybercrime in Canada. The Canadian government began recognizing the threat and took steps to address it. In 2001, the Anti-Terrorism Act was passed, which included provisions to combat cyber terrorism. This legislation was part of a broader global trend following the September 11th attacks, where countries sought to strengthen their defenses against all forms of terrorism, including those that could be carried out in cyberspace. In the early 2000s, Michael Calce, better known by his online alias Mafia Boy, became infamous for orchestrating a series of denial-of-service (DOS) attacks that disrupted major websites and highlighted vulnerabilities in internet security. Calce was a teenager from Île-Bizarre, Quebec, who became involved with online hacker groups at a young age. By age 15, he had already developed a reputation in the hacker community. His most notorious cybercrime spree occurred in February 2000 when he launched a series of DOS attacks against some of the largest websites of the time, including Yahoo, CNN, Dell, Amazon, eBay, and E-Trade, effectively knocking them all offline. The attacks were executed by exploiting vulnerabilities in university networks, which Calce had taken control of. He used these networks to flood the targeted websites with overwhelming amounts of traffic, shutting them down. The attack on Yahoo, the top search engine at the time, was particularly significant as it demonstrated the potential for a single individual to disrupt major online services. Calce's motivation was not financial gain, but rather asserting his dominance in the hacker community and proving a point about the vulnerabilities of supposedly secure systems. He later explained that the attacks were more about curiosity and testing limits than causing harm. The impact of Kelsey's attacks was profound, prompting a significant response from both Canadian and U.S. authorities. The attacks caught the attention of then-President Bill Clinton, who convened a cybersecurity summit to address the vulnerabilities exposed by Mafia Boy's actions. The FBI and Canadian law enforcement launched an investigation that eventually led to Michael Kelsey's arrest. He was charged with multiple counts of computer hacking and eventually sentenced to 8 months in a youth group home and a year of probation. The case served as a wake-up call for improving cybersecurity measures and highlighting the ease with which such attacks could be conducted. Following his arrest, Michael Kelsey turned his life around. He became a white-hat hacker, using his skills to help companies identify and fix security vulnerabilities. He has since spoken publicly about his experiences and the lessons learned from his actions, emphasizing the importance of cybersecurity in an increasingly digital world. The early 2000s also saw the rise of cybercriminal organizations in Canada. These groups often targeted businesses and government institutions, stealing sensitive data and holding it for ransom. One of the most notorious cases was the 2007 attack on TJX Companies, the parent company of several major retailers, including 184 Winners stores and 68 HomeSense stores in Canada. The attack, which compromised the personal data of millions of customers, highlighted the vulnerabilities in the retail sector and prompted a reevaluation of cybersecurity practices across the industry. The 2010s marked a significant escalation in the scale and sophistication of cybercrime globally and in Canada. The Northern Dragon case of 2014 was a significant cybercrime investigation showcasing the growing sophistication of international cybercriminal networks and the importance of cross-border law enforcement cooperation. The Northern Dragon case revolves around a group of hackers based in Canada who were integral to a larger international cybercrime syndicate. The Northern Dragon Group engaged in various cybercrimes primarily targeting financial institutions. Their key activities included hacking into banking systems, stealing sensitive financial data, committing identity theft, credit card fraud, and money laundering. The group's operations were highly sophisticated, employing advanced hacking techniques and malware to breach the security systems of financial institutions across multiple countries. The RCMP led the investigation into the Northern Dragon cybercrime group, but soon required international cooperation due to the syndicate's global reach. The investigation involved digital forensics, undercover operations, and tracking money laundering despite challenges posed by the group's encryption and anonymizing technologies. After months of preparation, a coordinated takedown operation with international partners led to simultaneous raids in Canada and abroad, resulting in key arrests and the seizure of critical evidence. The case was a significant success, highlighting the need for stronger cybersecurity laws and international collaboration in combating cybercrime in Canada. The Equifax breach of 2017 was a significant cybersecurity incident that affected millions of individuals worldwide, including Canadians. Between May and July of 2017, the breach compromised the personal information of approximately 147.9 million Americans, 15.2 million British citizens, and about 19,000 Canadians, making it one of the most significant data breaches in history. In Canada, the breach initially appeared to have affected around 8,000 individuals, but this number was later revised to over 19,000 as the investigation progressed. The compromised data included sensitive information such as names, addresses, social insurance numbers, and credit card details. The breach exposed vulnerabilities in Equifax's systems, mainly through a known flaw in the Apache Struts software used in their online dispute resolution portal. Equifax's response to the breach included notifying affected customers and offering free credit monitoring, but faced criticism from Canadians who reported difficulties accessing these services. Concerns were also raised about why Canadian data was stored in the U.S. The breach led to an investigation by the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, which found that while Equifax Canada stored data on Canadian servers, some information was transferred to the U.S., contributing to the breach. Globally, Equifax faced significant legal repercussions, including a $700 million settlement in the U.S. and indictment of Chinese military members for orchestrating the attack. In December 2019, Life Labs, a significant provider of medical lab diagnostics and testing services in Canada, discovered that hackers had gained unauthorized access to their computer systems. The compromised data included sensitive personal information such as names, addresses, email addresses, login credentials, passwords, date of birth, health card numbers, and lab results, affecting approximately 15 million Canadians. The breach was particularly concerning due to the nature of the information involved. Health data is highly sensitive, and its exposure can seriously affect individuals' privacy and security. Most affected individuals were from British Columbia and Ontario, with about 85,000 lab test results from Ontario residents being specifically compromised. Life Labs responded to the breach by hiring cybersecurity experts to secure their systems and assess the extent of the attack. They also paid an undisclosed ransom to the hackers to retrieve the stolen data. This decision was not taken lightly, as paying a ransom can set a precedent that encourages further attacks. However, Life Labs felt it was necessary to protect their customers' data. The breach prompted investigations by the Information and Privacy Commissioners of Ontario and British Columbia. These investigations aim to understand how the breach occurred and to evaluate Life Labs' response. The incident highlighted the increasing sophistication of cyber attacks and underscored the need for robust cybersecurity measures in organizations handling sensitive data. In the aftermath of the breach, Life Labs offered affected customers 1 year of free protection services, including dark web monitoring and identity theft insurance. The company also took steps to strengthen its cybersecurity defenses to prevent future incidents. Despite these efforts, the breach served as a wake-up call for the industry, emphasizing the importance of protecting personal information in an era of growing cyber threats. In recent months, Ticketmaster, the global ticket sales giant, has been embroiled in a significant data breach scandal that has affected millions of its users worldwide. The breach, attributed to the notorious hacking group Shiny Hunters, has exposed the personal information of over 500 million Ticketmaster subscribers, including yours truly. The breach was discovered when Ticketmaster identified unauthorized access to a cloud database hosted by a third-party provider between April 2nd and May 18th of 2024. This database contains sensitive customer information including names, contact details, and encrypted credit card information such as card numbers and expiration dates. The hacking group demanded a ransom of $500,000 US for the stolen data, which they later attempted to sell on the dark web. Ticketmaster has since emailed affected customers to advise them of the potential exposure of their personal data. The company has expressed regret over the incident and is cooperating with law enforcement to investigate the breach. They've also offered a 12-month identity monitoring service to those affected. Experts have pointed out that while Ticketmaster took measures to encrypt credit card information, the breach still exposed significant personal data that could be used for phishing and other fraudulent activities. Responding to the breach, cybersecurity experts recommend that affected individuals take immediate action to protect their information. This includes canceling credit cards, enabling two-factor authentication, and avoiding storing credit card information with online retailers. Additionally, users were advised to be vigilant against potential scams that may exploit the breach, such as phishing emails offering fake credit monitoring services. As investigations continue, Ticketmaster and its parent company Live Nation are pressured to address the vulnerabilities that led to this breach and reassure customers of their commitment to data security. The rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin gave cybercriminals a new way to conduct transactions anonymously, fueling the growth of ransomware attacks. Ransomware, a type of malware that encrypts a victim's data and demands payment for its release, has become one of the most prevalent forms of cybercrime. A significant ransomware attack occurred on June 14, 2021, when the Humber River Hospital in Ontario was forced to shut down its IT systems to prevent a ransomware attack. This led to significant disruptions, with staff unable to access electronic patient records and diagnostic test results. The attack caused long wait times in the emergency department and forced the cancellation of various clinics. Some ambulances even had to be redirected to other hospitals, underscoring the potentially life-threatening impacts of these cyber incidents. The threat isn't limited to the healthcare sector, however. In March 2023, Nova Scotia revealed a ransomware attack that compromised the personal information of up to 100,000 individuals. This breach, part of the broader Move It attack, affected various victims, including teachers, students, healthcare workers, and job applicants. Perhaps most disturbingly, it impacted 41 newborns born between May 19th and 26, 2023, with their names, addresses, and dates of birth being stolen. This incident affected approximately 10% of the province's population, yet received surprisingly little ongoing media coverage. Cyber attacks have become a significant threat to small businesses in Canada, affecting their operations, finances, and reputations. With limited resources, many struggle to defend against cyber threats. A Canadian Federation of Independent Business (CFIB) survey found that nearly half of small businesses experienced random cyber attacks between 2021 and 22, with 27% facing targeted attacks, particularly in the professional services and wholesale sectors. The financial impact is severe, with 41% of affected businesses reporting costs of at least $100,000, highlighting the need for improved cybersecurity despite cost challenges. The lack of cybersecurity training is a major issue, with only a tiny percentage of businesses offering mandatory training, increasing their vulnerability. Initiatives like the CFIB's Security Academy aim to provide accessible training to help small businesses improve their cybersecurity. However, many remain underprepared for sophisticated cyber threats, as small businesses often lack the security infrastructure of larger corporations. Even the Toronto Zoo recently dealt with a cyber incident, specifically a ransomware attack, which they first detected on Friday, January 5, 2024. Zoo staff quickly assessed the situation and investigated whether any guest, member, or donor records had been affected. Thankfully, no credit card information is stored in their systems. Retired Toronto Zoo employees, dating back to 1989, had some personal information stolen. As a proactive step, the Toronto Zoo offered all current, former, and affected retired zoo staff a complimentary 2-year credit monitoring service. Cybercrime targeting Canadians has surged, with common threats including fraud, online scams, and ransomware. In 2022, over 70,000 fraud cases were reported, leading to significant financial losses. Many go unreported. Tactics like phishing and business email compromise (BEC) are frequently used, causing both financial damage and eroding trust in digital systems. To combat these threats, the Canadian government created the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity in 2018. However, the rise of interconnected devices, also known as the Internet of Things (IoT), and attacks on critical infrastructure such as energy and healthcare remain growing concerns. As cybercrime evolves, continuous adaptation, cybersecurity awareness, and proactive protection measures are vital for individuals and organizations alike. After a short break, we will hear from the Vice President of Security Solutions at MasterCard, Amisha Parikh. Amisha will share some of the challenges faced by individual Canadians and small businesses regarding cybercrime and some critical solutions to help keep us safer online. Cybercriminals are always evolving, and they're targeting businesses like yours. Did you know that only 16% of Canadian small business owners feel prepared for a cyber attack? Over half don't even consider themselves likely targets. But the truth is, you are on their radar. As the world changes, MasterCard Security Solutions are leveraging years of expertise in technology innovation to address risks across the ecosystem to protect people and businesses. MasterCard brings standards, education, and a suite of capabilities to small and medium businesses to ensure optimal cyber health and to mitigate systemic operational risk. In an increasingly digital world, MasterCard is focused on securing all types of transactions, ensuring over 143 billion transactions processed on its global network are handled safely and securely. In addition, the MasterCard Trust Center provides small and medium businesses and the acquirers that serve them trusted and essential cybersecurity knowledge. The Trust Center offers easy, centralized access to free and wide-ranging research, education, and resources, including a free cybersecurity assessment tool to help you understand your security knowledge and unique needs. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit mastercard.ca/trust to explore your options and learn more today. And welcome back for our next segment. We are pleased to welcome Amisha Parikh. As we mentioned, Amisha is the Vice President of Security Solutions at MasterCard. She is responsible for managing a portfolio of products and services addressing fraud, cybersecurity, identity, crypto, account, and network solutions for MasterCard's Canadian market. Prior to MasterCard, Amisha spent a number of years working in product management, pricing, and revenue management roles in North America across the loyalty services, logistics, and aviation industries. She holds a bachelor's in science from the University of Waterloo and a master's in business administration from Wilfrid Laurier University. Thank you for joining me, Amisha, on this very special episode of Dark Poutine. First of all, I have a lot of questions for you, but number one, can you briefly explain your role as Vice President of Security Solutions at MasterCard?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Mike. As you mentioned, my name is Amisha Parikh. I'm the Vice President of Security Solutions at MasterCard with responsibility for go-to-market and commercialization of our security solutions products in the Canadian market. And really looking forward to our conversation today.
What do you see as the biggest cybersecurity threat facing Canadians today? I know there's a lot, but what's the biggest one?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before we kind of get into the conversation, I just wanted to take an opportunity to just let us kind of a bit of what we do at MasterCard and our role in protecting the ecosystem. We like to describe MasterCard as a technology company in the payments industry rather than just a credit card company. And we really lead through technology by operating our payments network, by building industry-leading products and services, which really directly impact our role in security solutions and as a product team in setting the foundation for new networks, such as using things like digital ID, leveraging technology like artificial intelligence, and some of the other things that we'll get to talk to today. We're really committed at MasterCard to building a better, more secure digital economy for everyone. A little bit of context. And then when we think about the cyber landscape, really valuable just to add some context into cybersecurity threats and the size of this issue in our marketplace. According to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, over $500 million was lost to scams in 2023.
Wow.
And that number is probably only scratching the surface. The RCMP and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre estimate that only 5 to 10% of fraud and cybercrime are actually reported. And when you take the lens back and look at this globally, like on a global stage, according to Cybersecurity Ventures, the cost and lost revenue from cyber attacks are estimated to reach over $10 trillion by 2025.
Holy smoke.
It's a staggering number.
Yeah.
And really just goes to show the size of what we're contending with here when we talk about cybersecurity. As our lives go digital, cyber criminals are constantly developing new techniques for stealing personal information, financial data, and we're seeing an uptick in a variety of different types of cybercrime and scams. I'm sure we have all had this experience where in our daily lives, we're hearing or receiving a suspicious text or an email or hearing about somebody in our network, friends, family who've received the same. And we're constantly hearing about this in the news as well, the various types of scams. These kinds of things will continue to persist, and we're seeing them proliferate, right? In terms of types of scams are expanding. What used to be a link in an email, and you'd be like, okay, now I've learned I shouldn't click on that, really expanding to things like investment fraud. We hear about romance scams, emergency, and what sometimes hear in the news as the grandparent scams, identity theft. It just goes on in terms of the different facets of our daily interactions where these fraudsters or bad actors in the ecosystem have really found ways. When I think about some of the risks in the ecosystem, scams is obviously a huge, huge piece of that and a huge topic that we're hearing about regularly. And despite this continued growth in cyber attacks in Canada, cyber preparedness really persists as an issue across the country. Mm-hmm. And so there are some things I think that we can talk about. And underpinning all of this is probably something we hear about often, which we can also chat about a little bit more detail, about artificial intelligence and how that's a tool in which what fraudsters are using to kind of evade some of the protection that we have in place, or even just some of the vigilance that people have day to day. We think about passwords as an example. It's like a basic level of protection. You use it to log in to an application, to a website, even to your financial institution's app. Yet a third of those surveyed across the country use the same password across multiple accounts.
I just can't wrap my head around it. It's like password 123.
Right. But people find it's a source of stress because it's anxiety to remember your passwords, to make sure that password is strong, to make sure that it's updated at a regular cadence. And so with all of the other things happening in life, people are like, okay, I got to be able to get into its applications, and convenience kind of supersedes, and then they're using the same password. But you're absolutely right. It's mind-boggling because the exposure and the risk around that is so huge. Even this idea of one-time passwords, sent by text message or email, which provide that added layer of protection if your password is being stolen, even those are becoming less effective because we're hearing about fraudsters doing things like SIM swap, where they're able to tap into your phone and then actually get that two-factor authentication, that password sent to a phone, and they're able to view that. Or they're calling you and pretending to be a legitimate organization like your local post office, maybe your bank, a trusted entity, and then asking for that extra password or that one-time password to be given to them over the phone. And so these kinds of things are all really concerning and definitely top of mind. And then with cyber criminals becoming even more sophisticated in how they attack, as I mentioned, they're using things like AI, and we're hearing even more about generative AI to new ways to commit fraud and scams. And generative AI are being used for things that we commonly hear about, deepfakes, which is really using AI to create legitimate audio or video. Scammers are using large data sets of images, video, and audio to replicate the voice and appearance. It could be of somebody you know. It could be somebody famous. And then software is used to make these people say things and have mannerisms on video before being shared. And then we hear things like phishing using ChatGPT. The idea of email phishing, I think we've all had this experience. It doesn't sound new, but AI has really changed how scammers can produce the emails to entice you to click on something or to share information. And in ChatGPT and other types of AI tools, it can easily create bodies of text that impersonate the tone and the types of messaging that you would hear from somebody maybe that you know. And then there's voice cloning, which is another form of deepfake AI, but they're really producing audio of your voice replicated in the tone, in the language of that individual, making it so convincing that there's somebody genuine that you know on the other end. And it's helping fraudsters leverage public data, leaked data, stolen data to create fake user profiles, impersonate organizations, and ultimately initiate fraudulent transactions.
There's so many things to worry about. Just as a regular person, let alone a business, how has MasterCard adapted to address rising cyber threats, particularly in fraud prevention and identity protection? How is somebody going to know I'm me?
And this is a great question, and I will be transparent in saying it's a huge challenge. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that cybersecurity is one of the most critical priorities, whether you're any level of government, national or local, whether you're a multinational corporation, whether you're a small business, whether you're a public figure or a private citizen, like cybersecurity is top of mind for everyone, and it's constantly evolving. One thing I did want to note, just because we were talking about who this impacts, it's also Small Business Month in Canada. The reason that's important is small businesses make up 98% of Canada's economy, yet only 16% of Canadian small business owners feel that they're prepared for a cyber attack. At MasterCard, we have often said that when we think about the risk of being impacted by cybersecurity or being impacted by fraud, it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's a matter of when. We're all going to encounter this at some point, whether it's in our personal lives or in our businesses or in our workplaces. That means ensuring this sort of investment in cyber hygiene from the start is really, really important, and making sure that things like technology, training, up-to-date best practices. I think from a global perspective, we're really invested in bringing new technologies to help in this kind of fight against fraud, as I'm going to call it. One thing that's really prominent here and just in line with what we were talking about around identity is biometrics. We're making it easy for businesses to integrate this concept of passkeys. Passkeys are essentially the replacement of passwords that we were just talking about with secure identity recognition, like things like fingerprints or eye scans, leveraging an individual's biometrics when logging into an app or a website or even making a purchase online. MasterCard's biometric authentication service, which helps resolve the friction and vulnerability that having to remember all of these passwords or the endless loop on multi-factor authentication prompts can create, has really been an important step in helping kind of in this race. It not only makes the digital experience more secure, but it's easier and it's faster, so less friction for all of us. Tokenization is another one, the process of protecting a payment credential to ensure it cannot be copied or reused. Another layer of security for payments that we're really invested in. Tokenization can be used in conjunction with MasterCard's biometric authentication service to secure online purchases. Specifically in Canada, as we think about today and the future, we launched our Global Intelligence and Cyber Center of Excellence in Vancouver in 2020 to invest in Canadian innovation and to accelerate global cybersecurity. In just a few years, the Center of Excellence has generated nearly 50 new cyber and intelligence patents and has invested over $9 million in a range of partnerships across Canada's diverse academia, not-for-profit, and industry ecosystems. And the reason this is important is it just highlights the importance of collaboration. It's vital that we all come together when we're talking about securing the digital ecosystem, not just for the threats that are posed today, but what we anticipate is coming in the future.
That begs the question, what's my part? What advice would you give to Canadian businesses when it comes to improving my and their cybersecurity practices?
That's a great question, and one that everyone should be asking themselves. There are small, actionable steps that we can take to protect ourselves, to protect our businesses from cyber attacks. And no matter who the individual or the size of business, we should all be thinking about good cyber hygiene, which can exponentially decrease the chance of cyber attack. That's everything from not using the same password across all of your applications and devices, making sure that they're strong, making sure that you're updating and changing them regularly. When we think about things like as simple as an update on my phone that's being pushed, a new patch on my computer, just making sure that you're up to date with all of the things that are available, as well as this element of vigilance. As an industry, we need to come together to educate audiences, business leaders, other businesses in our ecosystems, and ultimately consumers. And sharing this knowledge is really important, this idea of awareness and collaboration. There's no one great single thing that we can do to say, hey, if we do this and we're all going to be protected, but we can take the proper steps to set ourselves up for success. As consumers, there's threats that we continue to hear about in terms of, and we just chatted a bit about all the different types of scams that are out there, and that's probably only scratching the surface. But it's important to stay vigilant. It's important to stay alert and mindful, not only of the channels in which you're receiving information. We used to talk about scams coming in from online channels. Now we're seeing them come in as a text message on your mobile phone. We're seeing them come in through social media channels, but also who we are choosing to give our information to. With the increase in data availability and transactions happening in this digital ecosystem, we're also seeing the increase in data exchange and what we call data at rest. And that's essentially things like saving your payment credentials online, you're sending information to somebody, you're transferring a payment because you've bought something on a marketplace and you're sending someone money, account-to-account type payments, you're uploading a photo. All of these things are things that we probably do on a day-to-day basis. But the importance of knowing where you're doing it and who that information is being sent to and being vigilant about confirming identity and double and triple checking before we do those things is really important when we think about what we can do as consumers. And then leveraging tools as they're made available to us. Things like leveraging biometrics, things like being cognizant of the implications of AI are really important. When we think about businesses, MasterCard, one of the areas we focus on is the importance of empowering small business owners to help them meet and go beyond their goals. And we connect the tools and the platforms that they need to stay safe and drive their businesses forward. An example of this is MasterCard's cybersecurity assessment tool. This is a tool that's available for free, lets small business owners understand their needs, where they are in their own cybersecurity journey, and providing them with options and recommendations to help enhance their cybersecurity. So it's a great way to do an assessment and determine what's next. And then there's tools available, complimentary through the MasterCard Trust and Safety Center. Cybersecurity solutions and advice for small businesses are sort of available there, and access to programs offered through MasterCard's partners like Digital Main Streets, Trust Center to help educate small businesses about mitigating cybersecurity risk. I've reiterated on a number of times the importance of awareness and education, but that's really part and parcel of what we need to use to make sure that we're leveraging the right tools, the right assets, but also being aware of how information and data is being exchanged.
So you can easily find the MasterCard Trust Center at mastercard.ca/trust. There's a lot of information there. What are some misconceptions people might have about cybersecurity in the financial industry?
I think this is a really a good question. When I think about the common misconceptions we hear about, one is that if I change my password and I update my software, I'm safe. And if I make sure that when prompted, I do all of the things that I'm asked to do on an app, on an application, when transacting online, I'll be safe. And the importance of vigilance in every interaction is so critical. Just because you changed your password doesn't mean you don't need to be mindful of any time you're being asked to send money, transfer money, share information, upload data. And so that importance of there isn't a one and done. Thinking about security needs to be part of our daily lives. The other one, which I just touched upon earlier, was that scams originate online. I'll talk to a grandparent. They'll be like, I'm not doing any shopping online. And then I know I'm safe. But there's so many other channels. In North America, we still see online as being the primary channel. In parts of Asia, they're seeing through telecommunication channels being the number one. And it's led to changes in data sharing and the regulatory ecosystem to address that. We're exchanging data and interacting through so many different digital channels every day that these types of scams or fraudulent activity can happen across all of them. And I think the last is that fraudsters, there's this misconception that they're always performing illegal activities, which can be caught and traced. And in some of these instances where we talk about monetary exchange, account-to-account payments, many times in these scams, they're being authorized by the owner of that account. So if a scam comes to me and I've been like, oh my gosh, there's somebody on the other end and I need to send them money because it's an emergency situation and it sounds like it's my neighbor and I'm authorizing that transfer of money, the scam itself is originating in the ecosystem outside of the four walls of your financial institution. And then as an individual, person who's being scammed by this fraudster or by this bad actor is actually authorizing the transfer of money. And the reason this is important is it makes it really difficult then to actually identify that that was fraudulent. And there's a lot of tools that we are now building into the ecosystem and as our responsibility as a payment provider of how we support financial institutions in identifying patterns of behavior. In earlier 2024 announced a suite of solutions called Scam Protect. And the focus is really around this, understanding things like changes in patterns of behavior, high-risk transactions, anomalies in the types of, hey, this looks like a brand new recipient of a transaction that you've never sent money to before. Are you sure? And some of that requires the introduction of more friction into the transaction or into that interaction. But it's important because it's not always something that is evidently illegal or wrong, right? Fraudsters are actually following the rules in that sense where they're getting someone to authorize money being sent to them, even though ultimately that was sent in a fraudulent way. And what pairs with that is the importance of reporting. So quickly, when a financial transaction is fraudulent, it's very quick that that money can be transferred then to a mule account, can be transferred to then an alternative currency exchange like crypto. And so the importance and vigilance around, hey, if I was a victim of fraud, reporting it as quickly as possible is key to being able to try to track down that fraudster as quickly as possible.
So I know you guys can't really show me what's under the hood. You mentioned patents and all that kind of thing. If you could share a little bit, looking ahead, what advancements or changes do you see coming in cybersecurity over the next few years?
We're going to continue to see things like the proliferation of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for decades. At MasterCard, we've been using it to protect the ecosystem for over 10 years, protecting billions of transactions and deflecting fraud. So the use of AI itself is not new, but as we continue to see it being leveraged in so many different facets of business, of interaction, I think the ability to embrace technology like this is really key. You hear a lot of this, oh, generative AI is coming, and hesitant about it. Unfortunately, the bad actors in the ecosystem don't have that hesitancy. They're out there and they're not worrying about the use case. So I think it's really important that we're embracing new technologies like artificial intelligence is probably one of the single greatest technological advancements in our lifetime that we're going to see in terms of what it's going to do. And generative AI, the ability for it to learn itself, is really groundbreaking. And we need to embrace it because it has so many great use cases for us as society. And we also need to leverage it to combat the use of it by the bad actors in the ecosystem. So I say AI can combat AI being used by fraudsters. And so that's good news because all the technology that we have available to us is going to also be available to fraudsters in the ecosystem. And I think the other piece, as we think about looking out into the future, and maybe a little bit of like a pivot from just thinking about technology, is we really need a proactive and multi-layered approach that looks at technology solutions, but also the importance of industry collaboration. And when I talk about industry collaboration, we're talking about collaboration and enhanced data sharing, which is really fundamental. The fraud journey starts way before an actual financial transaction. And so it's so critical for banks and other financial institutions to work with partners in the ecosystem, like telecommunications companies, social media companies, to ensure that we're all putting in the appropriate controls, but also signaling when we see things that are anomalies. As I mentioned before, banks can only see what's happening within their own four walls. They can only see transactions that are occurring within their own systems, and therefore they can only train their models with the data that they have visibility to. So finding new ways for financial institutions to securely share data via a consortium model will help providers to analyze the movement of money, leveraging things like predictive intelligence, being able to look at things like identity fraud more quickly, prevent crime before it's even taking place, some of this financial crime. And we've seen that this is happening in other parts of the globe. We haven't seen this consortium model as formalized or regulated by the government in Canada and the US yet, but it's coming. We also see what we're doing globally. In the UK, we've got the 10 largest banks now live with consumer fraud risk, which leverages artificial intelligence and MasterCard's unique view of account-to-account transactions to help financial institutions intervene in real time and stop a payment to a scammer before the funds are actually sent.
Cool.
So just an example of how we're seeing this happening in real time and the importance of collaboration. The other piece here is really around market education. We need to collectively elevate global awareness around fraud and scams and empower people with awareness, prevention education, along with the right tools to protect themselves and their families from these types of losses. So I would say those are really important when we think about just what we need to do to pair with some of the embracing of technology to combat fraud.
It's such a big topic, and I've asked you a bunch of questions here, but is there anything that I haven't asked you that you really would like Canadians to know about?
There's a number of megatrends that are shaping the world around us right now and propelling the cyber industry forward. This continued rapid digitization, as we've talked a lot about, unprecedented levels of connectivity, and an exponential growth in data. And we know that this has fueled some of what we've been talking about around cybercrimes and fraudulent activity. And as a result of this growing digitization, we're seeing growing volumes of e-commerce and new payment technologies and more interaction online. There's an enormous set of data out on the internet as we think about something that we're using every single day. And generative AI models can sift through this data and collect information and piece together patterns and observe trends. And there's never been a more critical time for holistic cybersecurity solutions to support businesses, governments, and consumers around the world. What I would leave is the importance of everybody being mindful of what's happening in the ecosystem and this importance of collaboration as businesses and with our partners in the ecosystem and the obligation we have around that, but awareness and the accountability we all have to building awareness and staying vigilant in this fight against fraud.
Well, as somebody who has been defrauded a couple of times, I feel far more empowered now moving forward. So thank you so much, Amisha, for this information. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me.
And that is it for this very special bonus episode of Dark Poutine, Cybercrime in Canada, Staying Safe Online. Thank you to Amisha Parikh for all the great information and to MasterCard for sponsoring this episode. We'll be back with another regular episode of Dark Poutine on Mondays. So until then, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple, and stay safe online, folks.